Reference planes. In this short video, we'll take a look at reference planes and work planes. Before we get into creating reference planes in Revit, let's take a look at exactly what a reference plane is. Here you can see a quick sketch of a house. A reference plane in Revit is a vertical plane that you can create that will show up as a green dashed line. And this helps you in laying things out. So if we have this sketch of a house, we could draw a reference plane, represented here as the green line. And instead of just a green line, what Revit does is it creates a horizontal plane, a vertical plane that extends up and down from the line that you draw. And it'll appear as a green dashed line. Where it cuts the building and where you will see it in your view, for instance, right here. So here's the outline. Here's the outline of the reference plane. And as it is shown on the first floor level right here, the green line, it'll cut through the house like this. So if you took a floor plan cut, say right here and here, and you actually look down, you would see this line here and here and here, and it would extend out. And you would see that line in all the views that cut that reference plane. So you would see it from the elevation looking this way, or you would see it in the floor plan looking down, and you would see the dashed line. So let's take a look in Revit, and maybe it'll make a little more sense. I've created 4 walls here, as well as when we look in 3D, a roof on top of that, those 4 walls, similar to this sketch. Let's go back to the first floor plan. And you can find the reference plane in the Architecture tab, Work Plane panel, and the tool is right here, Reference Plane. You can select it here or type in RP for reference plane. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw one right down the middle. And you can see that it is a green dashed line. Now if we look at it in 3D, it will not show up. Reference planes only show up in the views that cut the reference plane. If we go to our site plan, we can see that the reference plane is here. One thing we might use a reference plane for is to line things up. If we align the reference plane to the ridge, now we know in whichever view that's cutting this reference plane where the ridge line actually is. So we could go to the west elevation and see that the reference plane is right here. Now it's pretty obvious where the ridge is without having the reference plane here, because you can see it in the elevation. However, in floor plan view, we assume that the ridge line is in the middle, but it not necessarily always is. So we can put a reference plane that's aligned with the ridge plane, and now we know if we're going to add a door or a window, we can align it and center it along that reference plane. Furthermore, as we add more reference planes throughout the project, and again, they're mainly a reference plane to help us align objects with each other that might otherwise be difficult to see in one view or another. So as we add more throughout the project, they might get confusing if we have too many. One thing we can do to help organize our reference plane is by highlighting it. We can give them a name. We'll call this reference plane the ridge line. And now whenever we're in a view, if we just click on the reference plane, we can see that this is actually aligned with the ridge line. That is how we named it. Reference planes are very powerful in Revit, and we'll learn much more about that when we learn about how to create families. For now, let's move on to work planes. Work planes are also found on the Architecture tab and on the Work Plane panel. A work plane is the plane in which all of the objects you're creating at that moment are created. If we go to Show the Work Plane, you get a blue grid. This is the work plane. If we go to 3D View and we show the work plane here, you can see that it is down on level 1. Let's go back to level 1, the floor plan view. The work plane is also just a layout tool or a reference guide. If you highlight the border of the work plane, you can see that the spacing of it is set at 4 feet. That is the dashed lines that you see within the boundary. Those are 4 feet apart. You can change that to any number you wish. And they help you lay out a building or walls or any objects along a module. If we create walls, you can see that Revit will snap to the intersections, and those are at 10-foot intervals. This is also very helpful if part of your building is at a different angle than another part. We can rotate this work plane, say 45 degrees, and now you can create walls very easily along that work plane at the different angle. You can turn the work plane off, and now you can see where the walls are more clearly. Work planes also allow you to set objects on different planes. For an example of this, let's go to the 3D view. There's our walls. We can get rid of these walls here. And let's set an object at the same angle or on this roof line right here. Well, we could go to the work plane and set the work plane by picking a plane. And if we pick that roof, you can see that the work plane has now moved to that plane. And now we can create certain objects along that plane. For instance, we can go to our Architecture tab, our Model panel here, and put in Model Text. If we hit OK, you can see that it has placed it along that roof. So no matter where we put that work plane, if we then set Model Text, it will follow that work plane. So let's do another one. We can set that work plane, let's say, to this roof. And you can see how it is aligned to the new roof. And again, we can go to Architecture, Model Text. We can type anything here we want. And now, it doesn't have to be on that roof, but it is in the plane of that roof. We'll just put it on the roof for clarity's sake. And we can turn that off, and we can see that we have some model text here and model text on the other roof as well. And that is the video for reference planes and work planes.